So with our lovely Mr. Z, we're going to warm up with a couple little find its and then work some recalls. So when warming up with your babes, I do find this can be a really nice way to get them in the groove of reorienting back to you from the environment. So ready? Zeus, come. Yes, nice job. So obviously we're going to capture any good little responses we're getting from the handsome guy. He loves going through his puppy push-ups, which is adorable. Ready? Find it. So the benefit of tossing a couple snacks, he's like, oh my gosh, I lost that one. Ready? This, come. Nice. We'll have to help him find where the other friend went. Ready? Find it. I know he sees better the snacks that are a little lighter compared to the floor. When they're darker, they kind of blend in. There we go. Zeus, come. Nice. So another good thing that I like to work on is as your babes do come into your space for those lovely recalls, there may be times where your puppies almost do a drive-by. So they come running, they do a little check-in, but then they drive off again in another direction. What I sometimes like to do is if your puppies tend to go really fast past you is let's say you are working on helping them sort of simmer down and not be quite as exuberant when they're coming to you. You could go, Zeus, come. Yes. And then feed right to the floor with a nice little find it. This way it kind of helps your puppy take a breather to go pick up the crumbs and the goodies that you dropped on the floor. The other thing to work on as well is getting your puppies to come nice and close into you, but you also want to sometimes at a separate point practice either gotcha or gear or collar or harness. So whichever you'd like to call it, but that's going to be a moment where your puppy gets comfortable with you grabbing for equipment. So if your puppy is very overwhelmed as you go to reach for them, I would start with conditioning that response first. If going and reaching for gear has at times become negative, so we tend to not like what the puppy's doing, we might grab them by their gear and move them away or pull them back or sometimes take them off of things. Remember then grabbing for equipment can sometimes then be a negative association or the end of fun or sometimes viewed as overwhelming. So remember, just like with us, if someone just randomly came and grabbed you and pulled you off of the furniture, you may also feel a little bit overwhelmed or flustered and or agitated. So there are better ways to help your puppies disengage or move from inanimate objects or bubbles without causing, tension or, again, some anxiety around the setup. So my favorite way to rock this is, and again, you can figure out whatever slogan makes sense to you, but I like gotcha because it just means I've got your gear and good things are going to happen. So I like to start it off by reaching and then feed. So you may not even pair it with your slogan word yet or your cue. So again, I reach down and then I feed. So that way, if let's say hand motion seemed flustering, I don't want your dog to feel that you reaching always equals the thing that they're most afraid of. So again, I reach over and then yes to feed. So you can see he really doesn't really care. So that's kind of what you're looking for is a response where they don't really care. He might be thinking also, why not do a touch or a hand target? So again, I'm going to offer again, hand off to the side and feed. So then as we go to practice this, so now he's lying down next to me over here in front of me, I would go and say, gotcha, and then feed for that. So the reason I want to be able to feel, again, that the puppy should be comfortable with you reaching and grabbing for equipment is it can be really helpful in an oh no safety situation. So maybe you weren't quite attached to your gear yet, so you have no leash on, but you've got their harness or whatever it might be. And your puppy's about to jump out of the vehicle because they haven't quite worked that impulse control yet and holding back is hard. That could be a situation where helping your puppy feel comfortable grabbing for gear to keep them from hopping out to be helpful. So again, I'm going to go again, gotcha, and then feed. So as I sometimes go and again, gotcha, and then I feed. So I'm just grabbing, I'm not pulling, I'm not yanking, I'm not scaring him by shaking the equipment, but I want him to think again, gotcha, and then yes to feed. So again, gotcha, yes to feed. So very nice. Beautiful. So then I'm not saying to always pair this with a recall because if let's say grabbing for gear is new or a little overwhelming, I want the puppy to come into my space, gotcha, and I grab his gear and I feed him for that. So now me holding him, he's like, we should just wrestle. But me holding him doesn't turn into confrontation, agitation, or a fear response, because now I've trapped the puppy and they don't understand why I'm now physically holding them. So remember, getting your puppy comfortable with the weird things we do as people can be very beneficial. So again, I go, gotcha, and then yes, nice job. So that way when we do have to sometimes physically restrain the puppy or do some sort of husbandry, so like for example, nail time or grooming or a physical exam at the vet's office, feeling comfortable with certain touches should be, again, something that I would start practicing before you need it. So I know we mentioned cooperative care and how we tried the scratch board for Mr. Z, and he did a really nice job. So you guys may want to also check out Cooperative Care with Deb Jones. She's on Facebook. She has a closed group, which I highly recommend. The other option is she does have an ebook, and I believe she even has, again, a hard book as well, so hard paper book. But I would recommend to start looking into it, because as your puppy matures or changes and there could be maybe an injury, and if your puppy's not comfortable with you touching toes or restraining or physically holding a body part, that can be very hard if now you have to do it because there's an ailment or an injury, and now there's no escape from the puppy from saying no thank you because they have to get the medical treatment done. So, but that's a great way to now start to pair something negative with forcing and then potentially even pain. And then later down the road, when you want to try handling again, your puppy will remember that situation, and then that'll be the response you might get again, even if there is no pain actually at the time. So remember that what you're working on is also prevention of behavioral problems down the road by showing your puppy that doing certain skills is non-threatening. So again, gotcha, and then I feed. Nice, good boy. I know for some folks, if it's a collar, you could go again collar, you could go hand if they're going to target the hand. So you can almost start to bring them into you. So let's say again, I lure him in, I might get a gotcha, and then I feed him throughout that lovely grab. But definitely something to start working on if he hasn't already been practicing some of the handling through equipment as well. And if your puppy does sometimes do better with learning how to be restrained for like certain vet visits or certain situations, make sure though that you're also checking into how to include cooperative care into that sort of scenario. Because if it's restriction and sort of forced on them, it could turn into a bigger explosion of behavior because your babe typically thinks there's no out. So make sure that when you're practicing, I know always the same spot on the floor. Make sure you're practicing with Mr. Z and of course with our other little handsome men in the program, the things you'd like them to get good at before you do need it in that situation. Nice job, sir. So give him a little break for some of the gotchas and a little bit with that recall, and then we'll work a few other little skills, but he did a really nice job. Good job, Mr. Z.